Okay, welcome everyone. Um, we'll see if some more folks trickle in, but I'm Daniel Klein. I work in the sustainability office for the city of Richmond. I also help coordinate Richmond Tree Week, and I'm honored that Peter Braun is joining us today to talk about trees and their benefits. Peter Braun is a passionate advocate for active transportation, community climate resilience, and urban greening. Originally from Falls Church, Virginia, Peter moved to Richmond 7 years ago to attend the University of Richmond and graduated with a BS in environmental studies and geography. During his undergrad at UR, Peter supported communications outreach and the creation of the RBA Green 2050 Climate Equity Index, a mapping tool that we all use in the office. And that was during his 3.5-year internship with the City of Richmond Office of Sustainability. In his previous role with the local nonprofit Capital Region Land Conservancy, he supported efforts to protect land and expand park access in Richmond, Henrico, and surrounding counties. Peter joined the Virginia Department of Health Richmond and Henrico Health Districts as a built environment policy analyst almost a year ago. And in his role, he works with nonprofit partners and other city and county departments to improve public health by increasing access to active and public transportation, supporting urban greening and parks, and implementing climate action strategies. And then I'll add that when Peter shows his family and friends around Richmond, his must-do activities include visiting the James River and proudly taking group pictures at his GRTC adopt-a-stops around town. Peter inspired me to adopt a stop myself. I'm going to hand things over to Peter to talk about trees for healthy communities. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And if you want to attend other Richmond Tree Week events, Tree Week goes until October 20th, which is this coming Sunday. We have dozens of events still on the schedule: tree plantings, tree giveaways, workshops, tours, bike tours, happy hours. So join us, and I'm going to hand things over to Peter.
All right. Thanks, Daniel, for a nice introduction. Appreciate it. It's always nice to work with the Office of Sustainability, and I'm really happy to be here for Richmond Tree Week as well. Happy Tree Week, everyone. As Daniel mentioned, my name is Peter Braun, and I work for RHHD, the Richmond and Henrico Health Districts, as the Built Environment Policy Analyst. And that means I get to work with a lot of folks around improving access to active and public transportation, and improving our built environment by increasing access to parks and green spaces. Today, we're here to talk about trees for healthy communities. This is very much connected to a lot of the work around climate and the environment, and I'm glad you're all able to join me today. And I wanted to talk about trees because they really are an unsung public health hero. Trees help support local public health, and as such, local public health departments have a particular approach to addressing issues of climate and the environment and urban greening. So we're going to talk about that. And also today, we're going to talk about the health benefits of trees and green spaces. I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into heat, health, and our urban tree canopy. And then we're going to talk about how we can actually maximize the health benefits of our urban tree canopy in Richmond. And sort of without further ado, I'm going to get right into how local public health addresses and approaches climate and the environment. We know that the neighborhoods that people live in have an impact on their health and well-being. So if you live in a neighborhood where there is high exposure to pollution, if you live near major roads and highways, or close to active industrial pollution or industrial activity that results in pollution, that can impact your health. We also know that having access to parks and green spaces and a healthy tree canopy is one of those things in the urban environment that can either help or hinder your health. And along with those things and access to public transportation, access to grocery stores, all of these things are considered the social determinants of health. So these are the factors in the environment that can support your health. And this is a relatively new approach to local public health. But it's not just us working alone. The CDC has set goals for improving environmental conditions that result in improved health outcomes. And altogether, these factors can help support your health. Whether it's education or healthcare access or a healthy neighborhood, a supportive community, or economic sustainability. We also know that climate change is a threat to public health. And the systems that we put in place now can help support our community's health now and in the future as climate change continues to impact us. And one of those environmental conditions that can really impact your health is air quality. Um, as I mentioned, living near a highway or a busy road with a lot of car traffic can lead to exposure to air pollutants. Cars with internal combustion engines that run on gasoline produce pollution. Sometimes that's nitrogen dioxide, sometimes that's ground level ozone, and sometimes that's particulate matter. So that's very ultrafine particles in the exhaust coming out of cars that can impact your health. And one of the main ways that we see bad air quality leading to poor health is through asthma. And unfortunately, Richmond is ranked towards the top of the list of the asthma capitals of the United States. So we're number 12 out of the top 100 US metro areas in 2024, according to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. But the good news is that we have a relatively healthy urban tree canopy in Richmond. And I like to say that trees are not just stagnant infrastructure. They're not just like a road or a street light. They are active participants. They are active members of our community or active infrastructure to support public health. And when I mean active, they're constantly working. Richmond's forests remove 914,000 pounds of air pollutants annually, saving $3.7 million annually in avoided healthcare costs, just in the city of Richmond alone. So the more we can do to support our urban tree canopy, the more work they can be doing all the time to help support public health and improve our air quality. One of the things that is going to be a growing concern for air quality is wildfires. We've seen that over the past few years. Each summer, we have wildfires that bring smoke all the way across the country to the Richmond area. And sometimes we even see these wildfires in Virginia, pretty close to home. And trees can help filter these air pollutants and protect public health during these more acute poor air quality times. The other thing that we have to address is the issue of pollen. A lot of people have particular allergies to particular kinds of pollen, like ragweed, but there's also tree pollen. And the more we can do to plant allergy-friendly trees, the better. Unfortunately, we have made decisions over the years to plant trees that produce pollen rather than fruit. So planting the male trees rather than the female trees, and more we can do to balance that out and reduce the pollen burden, the better. Another health benefit of trees in our urban environment is through water quality. Trees and green spaces absorb a lot of water. Richmond's trees absorb 210 million gallons of stormwater annually, saving $1.9 million in stormwater costs annually. And that's not just money in our public budget that can go towards other programs. That's also a reduction in your own home utility bills, your stormwater bills. In fact, there's a program in Virginia called the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, and that program can help you install things like uh, rain gardens, for example, that can actually help trap and absorb rainwater. And if you participate in that program, you can actually get a reduction on um, your stormwater bill from the city. So just plugging that program. Um, Trees also do a lot of work to slow floodwaters. We saw with um, Hurricane Helene that there were these major floods and washouts that impacted um, infrastructure and even drinking water supplies. So having more trees in our urban environment that can slow floodwaters and filter out pollutants from those waters can actually help protect us in the event of severe flooding or severe storms. At the bottom of your screen, I just wanted to point out that these are two examples of stormwater best management practices. On the left, this is in the middle of a parking lot. There's this sort of island of forest that was planted, and you can see these little curb cuts, and that's so that water from this parking lot can actually flow right into this area rather than being sent off through the storm drains and have to be treated. It can be treated right here by the plants growing in this parking lot. Just want to check the chat, just to make sure there aren't any questions. Yeah, Daniel's saying depave it to save it. And we will get to that actually. Another way that trees and green spaces help support public health is through promoting physical activity. We know that physical activity is really important for your overall health. It can improve quality of life, reduce the risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, and type 2 diabetes, among other things. But we actually do see that access to and exposure to green spaces results in higher levels of physical activity. And also, parks and green spaces promote physical activity. And that's partially because a lot of places that are rich in trees also have these other public amenities. So trails and greenways are often planted with trees, and parks are often filled with trees. And so you get this relationship between the two. But why is that? It's largely because trees make the presence of trees and the level of tree canopy can make outdoor exercise and physical activity more appealing. If you're not sweating in the hot sun, if you're actually in a calming environment with trees and access to nature, it can make it easier and more appealing to engage in outdoor activity. But trees alone sort of aren't the only solution to physical activity. The trees have to be paired with some kind of infrastructure to get these benefits. So on the left there, you can see on Franklin Street in Richmond, there is this cycle track, and it's beautifully shaded by trees along a large length of this corridor. And on the top right there, you can see a spot in Jackson Ward that doesn't have trees and doesn't have sidewalks. So you can see where there's a path sort of worn into the ground, but I don't know about you, but I would be much more likely if I lived in this neighborhood to actually go out for a walk with my family, with my dog, with friends, if there were sidewalks and there were shade trees. And you can see on the bottom right there, this is a section of the Broad Street corridor downtown where there's a bus stop. And it makes it a lot easier to get out and move, take the bus, go for a walk, and even shop in this corridor if there are trees to help make this area feel more comfortable and safe. I'm going to take a quick drink of water, but then get to this next point. So trees also help to promote good mental health and good mental health and well-being. Proximity to trees and green spaces has a restorative and also a protective effect on mental health, even when controlling for socioeconomic factors. And when I say a restorative effect, I mean bringing you back to alignment or back to a positive baseline for your mental health. So trees are associated with lower heart rate. If you walk in green spaces, it can help lower heart rate on a one-off basis. But also children with ADHD who spend time walking in nature also experience improved concentration. Walking or sitting in a park for 10 minutes or more can help improve your mood. And all of these are sort of on a one-off basis. If you engage in this even one time, it can have an immediate health benefit in a number of studies. But if you engage in, if you experience nature, if you are exposed to trees and spend time in green spaces on a repeated basis, they also have a protective effect against depression and anxiety. So some of the more serious mental health issues. So that's sort of an overview of some of the most common benefits of a healthy urban tree canopy. But one thing I wanted to talk about was the issue of urban heat. And we have two major issues in Richmond that are making urban heat much more difficult and much more intense. I wanted to talk a little bit about the context that we're living in right now in terms of climate change. Throughout our history in the city of Richmond, we've seen about 10 days of extreme heat or extreme temperatures. And that's a day of temperatures where the maximum temperature is above 95 degrees. Already, we are starting to see double the amount of days of extreme heat. So around 21 to 23 days of extreme heat. And by the end of the century, our climate models are predicting that we'll have anywhere between 38 and 72 days of extreme heat in Richmond. And that's kind of that's a life-changing difference. That changes quality of life in Richmond significantly. It's not going to be an issue that we can avoid. It's not going to be an issue that we won't notice either. We're going to see this and feel this in our own community. So when you combine urban heat with the urban heat island effect, it makes this issue a little bit more complicated in a city like Richmond. So the urban heat island effect is in cities. We have lots of surfaces such as buildings and roads and parking lots that absorb and re-emit the sun's heat. So materials like asphalt and concrete, metal and glass, all of these materials that our cities are made of actually trap and store heat throughout the day and release that heat throughout the night. And that's different than a rural area, which might have rivers and streams, forests and fields, all of these natural features that are naturally cooling the environment. And how that works is through evaporation. Trees and rivers and lakes are constantly evaporating water, and through that process, they release heat. But in a city, we don't have as much of those features. And sort of to demonstrate that issue, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Richmond and Henrico Health District's office here in downtown Richmond. So I'm sitting in our conference room on the fourth floor of the building and looking out the window right now at this view. And you can see there's a parking lot right in front of our building, but if you cross the street, there's another parking lot. And if you cross that next street, there's another parking lot. So it's really parking lots as far as you can see. And all of these paved surfaces, these blacktops, are trapping and absorbing heat throughout the summer, throughout the day. And it makes it pretty uncomfortable to walk around. There aren't a lot of shade trees, and there's just this wide open expanse of pavement. And so not only do we not have the trees to help us, but we also have a lot of pavement that's making it hotter in this area. And so we see this this sort of urban design in a lot of areas of the city of Richmond, areas that have lots and lots of pavement and few trees. And the conversation about urban heat sort of started way back in 2017 when the Science Museum of Virginia conducted a community heat mapping campaign. And what that means is they got a whole bunch of volunteers to go out with little temperature sensors attached to the side of their car, basically. And they drove different routes around the whole city of Richmond, collecting data the whole time. And they all went out at the same exact time on the same day in 2017. And they put all of that data into a computer model, and it produced this map that you can see on the screen here of Richmond's urban heat islands. And these are areas, the areas in red are areas that are significantly hotter on average than the city overall. So in red, if you look at South Richmond, you can see these lines sort of fanning out from Manchester. You can see Midlothian Turnpike and Hull Street Road and Richmond Highway and I-95 all fanning out. And these are largely built up areas with a lot of large roads, lots of pavement, lots of parking lots. And this has a measurable effect on the temperatures that people experience in these areas. To contrast with that, you can see along the James River, there's this large stretch of blue. And that is due to the James River Park system and the river itself. The James River and the James River Park system sort of act like the city's air conditioning system. They are cooling the air around them and releasing all that heat back into the atmosphere. And so that's a really big, I mean, if you can map it, if you can see it that obviously, that's a really big asset to our community when it comes to cooling. And as we're addressing the issue of heat, obviously I work for the health department, so I would love to know what is the actual public health impact of extreme heat. We know that public health is the most cited impact of extreme heat nationally. Extreme heat is the deadliest US weather-related risk, and extreme heat accounts for a larger portion of the public health burden than most other natural disasters combined. So this is no small issue. And we see it on a person-by-person basis, really. Extreme heat is actually impacting individuals in our community. And when we talk about health, the main thing that we mean is heat-related illnesses. And heat-related illnesses include heat cramps, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, or even death. And that occurs when the body is unable to properly cool itself. Heat stroke and heat stress, those types of things aren't the only kinds of impacts of heat. If you also have other kinds of health conditions, pre-existing health conditions, like a cardiovascular issue, if you have asthma, if you are pregnant, you can also experience other kinds of health emergencies. And every year we see about 70 EMS, so 911 calls in the city of Richmond for heat-related illnesses. And then on top of that, we see many more emergency department visits. So who is most impacted by extreme heat in Richmond? Unfortunately, as with many other things, this is an issue of equity and health equity. Heat-related illnesses disproportionately impact Black and African American residents when we look at the number of heat-related illness EMS calls in the city of Richmond. We also see that people over the age of 50 and people identified as male are disproportionately impacted. The most common reported risk factors associated with heat-related illnesses includes homelessness, alcohol or substance use, or mental or cognitive issues. And to me, that says that heat is an issue that is particularly impacting Richmond's most vulnerable populations. And that means that the solutions that we come up with should really be geared toward protecting vulnerable people where they are most vulnerable. And we know where the highest rates of heat-related illnesses are occurring. We've mapped it out by census tract here on the right. And you can see that Jackson Ward and the Greater Scots Addition area have experienced the highest number of heat-related illness EMS calls. And if you think about the environment in these places, Jackson Ward was the Harlem of the South. This is a formerly redlined area. This is an area that was impacted by the building of I-95, which actually bulldozed large sections of this area. And it is largely a Black community, a historic Black community that has not received the same kind of investment that other areas of the city have experienced. While seeing a similar number of heat-related illnesses, Scott's Addition and the Diamond District are seeing them probably for different reasons. If you think about the environment in Scott's Addition, this is a formerly industrial area that has been converted into a largely industrial and largely residential and residential mixed use area. So this is a large number of people living in an area with very few trees and a lot of pavement, a lot of concrete. And I think it's really important to map out where we're seeing the most heat-related illnesses, because I think it makes the issue of urban heat much more human. And it means that the interventions that we need to take to cool these areas and protect people really have to be on a human scale. And we can help our community be more resilient to heat sort of through a two sets of solutions. So heat management are the strategies that help communities and individuals prepare for and respond to heat. Think about cooling centers and making sure people have air conditioning, making sure that people who are experiencing homelessness are able to find shelter during a heat wave. Heat mitigation or heat reduction are strategies that are focused on actually cooling our city and our neighborhoods. And that includes tree planting and greening. So that's what I'm really going to focus on in the next part of this presentation, is how can we actually use tree planting and urban greening as a tool to cool our community. So we can maximize the cooling benefits of trees by, first of all, it sounds really obvious, planting more trees where they're needed most. We can also make sure that we continue to care for the health of our urban tree canopy. We can make more space for trees by depaving and strategically pulling up pavement. We can plant for density, and we can partner for success. But the bottom line is maximizing tree canopy coverage. We need more trees in more places, and we need them in the places that they are needed most. And we need them almost so close together that the tree canopy knits itself together. So planting more trees. Richmond has a goal of increasing our tree canopy coverage from 42% in the city to 60% by 2037. And that's according to the Richmond 300 master plan. And I think there's a lot of work that's already started. Richmond Tree Week is one of those initiatives that I think helps the city prioritize tree planting. But we are also going to see some more energy, I think, in the city around increasing our tree canopy through the upcoming Richmond Urban Forestry Master Plan. So when you start to see opportunities to get involved, please do. This is not just an opportunity to plant more trees, but to have a plan to address both the issue of heat and the issue of lack of access to tree canopy and all those other health benefits. And I think that plan will also be an opportunity to prioritize maintaining what we already have. It's not enough just to plant more trees. We also have to take care of the ones we have. A very young tree has less positive environmental and health benefits than a very mature tree. A 30-year-old tree with a 2-foot wide diameter and 100-foot wide tree canopy is going to support more native species, is going to be able to cool the surrounding environment more, provide more shade, and absorb more water than a very young 2-year-old, 3-year-old tree. And when we are going to plant more trees in our community, there are a lot of tools out there. One I wanted to mention is the tree equity score analysis or analyzer, I think is what it's called. And this actually looks at a census tract level, census block group level, at what areas of Richmond actually have lower levels of tree canopy. And you can see in this map, it might be a little bit small, but the areas in orange have a lower tree equity score. And that means that there are fewer trees than what is needed in those areas. And if you remember that urban heat island map, the map of tree equity scores in Richmond sort of follows along the same lines of the map of urban heat islands. And in fact, heat disparity is one of the factors included in the tree equity score. Another strategy for maximizing the health benefits of trees is planting for canopy density. When implementing greening, the #1 factor influencing how much cooling our trees can provide is a dense tree canopy providing deep shade. So if you're just planting one tree every 100 feet or so down a really high heat corridor, you're really not going to get the same health benefits than if you plant those trees close together. I don't know how well folks know their trees, but if you plant something like what's called a crepe myrtle, which is a non-native tree that has a relatively small tree canopy, it may be 10 feet wide when it's fully mature, compared to a very large native oak tree that might have 100-foot wide tree canopy. You're going to have very different experiences as a person standing under that tree. You're going to be a lot hotter standing under a very small non-native tree compared to a very large shade tree. So canopy density is really important for providing cooling. One of the strategies or one of the methods to increase tree canopy density is through microforests, or what's called the Miyawaki method, which is this method of planting new forests very densely. You can see on the bottom left there, there's a number of volunteers out in this forest or adjacent to this forest planting hundreds and hundreds of small trees and shrubs. And when they grow up together this way, there is a natural separation of layers. So you get the really tall tree canopy layer, you get a sub layer, and then you get this shrub layer. And there's environmental benefits to that. You can support more biodiversity, but there's also a better cooling effect. So you have dense tree canopy, and you have more leaves per square foot, basically, that are actually releasing moisture into the air and cooling the air. The other thing that we can do is make more space for trees. We're going to need to do more than fill all of the vacant tree wells in the city of Richmond. Similar to, thinking of the sea of parking lots in downtown Richmond, the paved area around trees can really negatively impact tree growth and ability to cool. We actually need to remove some of the pavement on our streets and in our parking lots and make room for trees. Trees don't need a ton of space, but the more you give them, the healthier they are. That's what I sort of meant by that paved area around trees is really can really negatively impact the tree's growth and ability to cool. So as Daniel mentioned in the chat, we need to depave it to save it. And we can also, as we've seen in some other communities like in DC and in Baltimore, we can reserve space for trees in new development. So developers are going to be partners, I think, in addressing the issue of urban heat. It's going to take all of us, and making sure that trees and green spaces are incorporated into any kind of development is going to be really important for supporting health. One of the last things I wanted to mention was just partnering for success. It really is going to take everyone, volunteers, local government, different city agencies, nonprofits, and businesses, local businesses, churches, community groups, all of the above to address the issue of urban heat and ensure that we have a thriving urban tree canopy. And a lot of this happens through building community relationships. I know the City of Richmond's Office of Sustainability has been really good about building more relationships with community-based organizations that are doing the work on the ground, such as Southside Relief and Groundwork RVA. These two organizations have been doing, this work for decades now, really, and they have really strong relationships with local communities. If you plant a tree in front of somebody's house and you plant something that they really don't want, if it's something that the neighborhood doesn't really want, that's going to make it much more difficult for that tree to thrive and survive. And you're really missing out on a lot of the other benefits around community building and relationship building that tree planting can catalyze. So sort of leaning into these expert community-based organizations is the best way forward. And that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed some of this, and I would be happy to answer some questions. And I will check out the chat as well if anyone has dropped any questions in the chat. You are also welcome to come off mute if you'd like to ask a question aloud.
There are no questions.
No
Then I will
questions.
say thank you, Peter, for this incredible presentation. I learned a ton listening in, and I love to hear about how trees are so interrelated with public health and climate and community resilience. So I appreciate you bringing all that to us. I'm going to post this on the Reforest Richmond website. I'm also going to share this out as much as I can. For those of you who have joined us today, check out the Reforest Richmond website. It's just reforestrichmond.org. And you can see more things that have to do with Tree Week. You can go out and plant a tree if you want, now that you know the importance of trees, or you can pick up a tree for your yard. I just want to say thank you to Peter. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for everyone who joined today. Definitely come out and join some of the other Richmond Tree Week events.
Go trees.
Go trees.